I hadn't slept in 72 hours, and I was still wide awake. That's what the pills promised. No sleep, no fatigue, just relentless clarity. At least at first. The job was a coast-to-coast haul, Boston to San Francisco, with a deadline tighter than a fuel line in winter. 3,000 miles and change, and I had 4 days to do it solo. Normally, I wouldn't touch something like that, but things hadn't been normal for a long time. My bills were piling up like snowdrifts, and this run came with a payout big enough to thaw everything out for a while. I was gassing up outside Philly when I first heard about the pills. Another driver, older guy, steel gray beard and a haunted look, dropped the name like it was a secret he didn't want to carry anymore. Zeta Clear. Over the counter in Mexico, illegal in the States. Designed for military use, or so the rumor went, keeps soldiers awake, alert, unflinching for days. He handed me a blister pack like it was a loaded gun, muttered something about being careful. I should have listened. The first one hit fast. Within 20 minutes, my mind was a sharp-edged blade. The road seemed to slow down, like I could see every pebble in the asphalt before my tires kissed it. My hands on the wheel felt like extensions of thought, not flesh. No yawning, no drowsy head nods. I was locked in, laser-focused, cutting through the hours like they were nothing. I didn't even feel hunger. Ate out of habit, not need. Time bled together, a highway of moments without breaks or off-ramps. States flew past like signs on the shoulder. Ohio, Indiana, Missouri. At night, the world turned into a slick black ribbon under a sky full of shattered glass stars. No traffic, no distractions. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the rhythmic pulse of the yellow lines flying by. By day 3, I started to notice little things. The side mirror flickered. Just once. Like a frame skipped in a movie. I chalked it up to road fatigue, but my body didn't feel tired. My thoughts were too clear, too organized. That's the thing. When you're sleep-deprived, you know something's off. But this was different. It felt better than rest. Still, the glitches kept coming. The CB radio crackled out of nowhere sometime near Denver. Static, then what sounded like a voice. Not words, just syllables garbled and wet, like someone whispering underwater. I grabbed the receiver, half out of reflex, but there was no one on the other end. Just silence. The green light stayed on a second longer than it should have, then clicked off. I told myself it was interference. Alluo se guay. Nothing more. The dashboard clock reset itself the next night, while I was cruising through Utah. Flashed 12 o'clock for a second, then righted itself like nothing happened. My GPS stuttered for a heartbeat after that, rerouting me off I-70 onto a parallel road that didn't exist on the map. I ignored it, punched into destination again, and watched it snap back like a leash had been pulled. I still wasn't sleeping. Not even micro-naps. Not even blinking slow. The pills had turned me into a machine. But machines don't hallucinate, and that's what started nagging at the back of my skull. There were moments where I thought I saw something in the corner of my eye, just beyond the frame of the side mirror. Something leaning, not standing. Slouched, long-limbed. There, then gone. Never enough to confirm. Always enough to unsettle. It wasn't until Nevada that the first real sign came. The sun was coming up, pink streaks dragging across a flat, empty desert. I was somewhere between Ely and nowhere, just road and dust stretching to infinity. I reached for my thermos, and my eyes drifted to the windshield. There was a smear, right at eye level, across the passenger side glass. Looked like someone had dragged their hand across it, but from inside. I frowned, leaned closer. The glass was cold to the touch, clean, except for the smear. It looked fresh, damp. I grabbed a rag from the glove box and wiped it. The streak came off easy, but left behind a red tint on the cloth. Not brown like old soda. Not rust. Red. Vivid bright. I checked my hands. No cuts. No blood on me. Nothing in the cab looked disturbed. The curtain to the sleeper area was closed tight. My stomach twisted. I pulled over at the next rest stop and threw the rag into the trash. I splashed cold water on my face until my skin felt numb. Stared at myself in the mirror. My eyes were wide, too wide. Pupils blown open like twin tunnels. There was no turning back now. I still had 2 more states to cross and 30 hours on the clock. But for the first time since I started this drive, I felt something clawing its way into my mind. Doubt. And just beneath it, fear. Around 3 a.m., I heard something breathing behind me. The only problem was I was alone. At first, I thought it was the wind rattling through the sleeper vent, but the pattern was too rhythmic. Inhale, pause, exhale, slow and heavy, like someone asleep, just feet away. I dared a glance into the rearview mirror, half expecting to see nothing, half praying for it. The curtain separating the cab from the sleeper was still drawn shut, but the breath kept coming. No change, no thought, just the sound of something alive. The rational part of my brain tried to take over. No sleep in days, plus an experimental drug with unknown side effects. It made sense that my perception was slipping. Hallucinations, auditory distortions. But deep down, I couldn't shake the cold certainty that whatever was behind me wasn't a figment. I cranked the music louder, not to drown the sound, but to pretend I couldn't hear it. Denial works best at full volume. The miles ticked by slower now. Each state line felt like a threshold I shouldn't be crossing. Somewhere in Arizona, I pulled off at a truck stop and shut off the engine. Silence pressed in thick and fast. The second the fan blades stopped spinning, I heard it again. One long breath, wet and slow like lungs filling with tar. I turned sharply, yanked the curtain aside in one violent motion, expecting to find an animal, a homeless stowaway, a something. But the sleeper bunk was empty. Immaculate. Pillows untouched. Sheets flat. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Not from outside, not from the road, but from within. Like the space behind my shoulder had shrunk without me noticing. Every shift in the truck's suspension made me jump. Every pop of the axle felt like a footstep. It was time to be sure. I stopped in Flagstaff the next day and picked up a cheap dash cam. One of those no-frills, motion-sensing units. I mounted it over my right shoulder, angled just enough to see into the sleeper cab behind me. If the pills were messing with my head, the footage would show nothing. That's what I told myself, over and over, like a mantra. The next night, the breathing didn't come. Or maybe it did, and I was too afraid to acknowledge it. Either way, I kept my eyes forward, hands tight on the wheel, only looking at the camera light now, and then to be sure it was recording. The desert was endless, flat, and silent. The kind of silence that hums louder than noise. When morning finally dragged itself over the horizon, I pulled into a gravel lot behind a diner somewhere in the Mojave. The camera had logged 6 hours of footage. I replayed it on my tablet while the engine idled and the sun beat down on the dashboard like a punishment. Most of the video was grainy, uneventful. The hum of tires, the occasional CB chirp, my own shifting weight in the driver's seat. Then, at exactly 3:17 a.m., the feed glitched. Just a single stutter. Not a full skip, not a blank screen, just a warped flash. One frame corrupted. I paused it there. The image was hard to look at. Behind the driver's seat, half shrouded in shadow, was a shape. Hunched, crooked, knees bent backward like a broken mannequin. It had arms, long, too long, and a head that leaned forward unnaturally, as if studying me. No facial features, just pale skin stretched thin over something that didn't belong in the back of a truck. The eyes, or what passed for them, were pinprick black like tiny holes burned into a sheet. I scrubbed forward. The next frame was clean. Empty sleeper. No trafe. I replayed it 5 more times, thinking maybe it was a trick of the light. Maybe a distorted reflection. But no light I knew bent that way. And no reflection stared directly at you like that. From then on, night driving became a test of will. I kept one eye on the road and the other on the mirror. That's when I started seeing it again, not in the footage but in real time. The shape returned, always in the right side mirror, never clear. A sliver of movement, something just retreating when my eyes found it. The illusion of pursuit, but never an approach. Always there, yet never arriving. I tried to rationalize it. I really did. Maybe the fatigue was catching up in ways the pills couldn't block. Maybe my brain was dreaming while my eyes were still open. But then came the kicker. Outside of Bakersfield, I pulled into a weigh station. Routine check. Paperwork, vehicle inspection, the usual. The officer glanced at my odometer and noted something odd. more miles logged than the route should allow. I brushed it off, told him I took a long detour to avoid construction. He nodded, uninterested, and waved me on. But when I parked that night and double-checked my logbook, it didn't add up. I'd driven exactly 1,764 miles since leaving the East Coast. That part was clear, but the odometer read 1,964. An extra 200 miles unaccounted for. No detour, no backtracking, no stops that long. I even pulled up my GPS history. Dead zones, gaps in data, chunks of the route missing between timestamps. Places I didn't remember passing. Towns I couldn't pronounce. I stared at the dashboard in silence for a long time, fingers still on the wheel, eyes unfocused. Because if I didn't drive those extra miles, someone or something did. I've been driving for hours, but the exit signs never changed. I passed the same dead gas station 5 times. Same flickering sign, same broken windows, same rusted sedan parked at pump number 4. I even started looking for subtle differences, hoping I was wrong. But each loop brought the same cracked Coke machine leaning sideways by the front door, the same deflated tire lodged in the drainage ditch out front. I pulled off the road and killed the engine. The GPS spun for a moment, then snapped back to Highway 46. No deviation, no suggestion of a loop or repeat. Just a clean, straight line heading west. I zoomed out and back in, thinking maybe it was a display error. But the more I looked, the more I realized the road didn't seem to end. Every turn I thought I'd taken just curved me back toward the same stretch. Like the highway had folded in on itself without warning. The sun didn't help. It hung in the same place in the sky for what felt like hours, a dull, oppressive orb that neither rose nor sank. The shadows didn't move. Time itself felt frozen, but the odometer kept ticking. I kept moving, if only because stopping felt worse. The curtain in the back remained closed, but the sensation of being watched had grown heavier, as if the thing behind the seat had grown bolder, or maybe hungrier. Somewhere along that impossible stretch, the radio came to life. At first it was static, nothing unusual. I flipped the dial, scanning for music or news, something to cut through the silence. Instead, I landed on a channel broadcasting my own voice. It wasn't a recording. It was speaking now, matching my cadence and tone, but the words were wrong, twisted, like a memory being recalled by something that didn't understand human speech. I heard myself say things I hadn't thought, sentences stitched together like pieces from separate dreams. One phrase stuck with me. You already arrived. You just forgot to stop. I switched off the radio and drove in silence. That night, parked in an empty rest stop, I tried to research the pills. Zeta Clear. Everything I'd read before had been vague, threads on trucker forums, half-buried testimonials, a few clinical notes translated from Spanish. But now, something new had surfaced. A post pinned in a user's profile titled, Zeta Clear, do not take this. The author claimed the pills were part of a short-lived defense contractor project. The goal was to extend operational time in soldiers, but the side effects emerged fast and hard. Detachment, time loss, reality drift. Some users reported seeing things. Others went missing entirely, their rigs found idling on empty roads, drivers never located. The most chilling part was the postscript. They don't stop you from sleeping. They stop you from realizing you're already asleep. I blinked, refreshed the page. The post was gone. A new thread had taken its place, something mundane about axle repair. No record of the author. No cached version. It was as if the message had never existed, except I remembered every word. I left the site and sat back, hands still trembling slightly. The cab felt smaller than before, the air denser. Later that night, I stepped outside to stretch. The cold air slapped my skin, snapping me briefly back to reality, or whatever passed for it now. The lot was deserted except for a few distant trucks, engines idling like sleeping beasts. I walked toward the vending machines, not really hungry, just needing something mechanical to do. That's when I saw it, on the bulletin board next to faded maps and tattered service ads. A flyer, weather-worn, edges curled. The headline read, Missing Driver. If seen, contact authorities. The photo was black and white, grainy. but unmistakable. It was me. Same jacket, same trucker cap, same faint scar above the left eyebrow. The date at the bottom said the man I had gone missing last year. I stood frozen, staring at my own face as if it belonged to a stranger. A warped sense of dislocation settled in, like the world had tilted just enough to be wrong, but not enough to fall apart. I tore the flyer from the board and stuffed it into my jacket pocket, heart hammering. My thoughts churned, trying to rationalize. Maybe someone else looked like me. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe the date was printed wrong. I didn't believe any of it. Back in the cab, I sat behind the wheel, staring at my own reflection in the windshield. Same face, same eyes, but there was something off, like the reflection had been paused a second too late, caught between expressions. The next morning, still shaken, I pulled into a larger truck stop, hoping for some sense of normalcy. Other people, noise, sanity. I parked beside a row of rigs and wandered inside the diner. As I scanned the room, a man near the back lifted his eyes and locked onto me. He stiffened. I saw something flicker across his face, recognition followed by unease. He stood slowly cautious. He said something, pointed at me, then to himself. He looked confused, maybe even afraid. His mouth kept moving, questions spilling out faster than I could process. I could only shake my head. He said we'd spoken before, that I looked different now. So the last time he saw me, I was thin, gaunt, sunken cheeks, red-rimmed eyes like I hadn't slept in weeks. Said I was muttering about loops and something living in the cab. Said it was 3 months ago. I told him I'd never been here before. He didn't believe me. He looked at me for a long time, then just walked away. I stood there, rooted to the spot, heart racing. My skin crawled with a sensation I couldn't name, like I was being rewritten by a memory I never had. I stumbled back to the truck, replaying his words. 3 months ago. Gaunt. Muttering. The problem was, I'd only started this trip 4 days ago. At least I thought I had. I saw it in the rearview mirror. The back curtain moved, and I hadn't opened it in 2 days. It didn't sway from a bump in the road or shift with the motion of the truck. It moved like something brushed past it from the inside. Slow, deliberate, like fingers dragging fabric. I stared at it longer than I should have, almost forgetting I was still barreling down the highway. When I finally forced myself to blink, it had stopped, perfectly still, as if it had never moved. But it had. I knew it had. From that point forward, the hallucinations, if that's what they were, grew teeth. The breathing returned, but now it was closer, audible over the engine, layered with wet clicks and the occasional soft thump, like knuckles tapping vinyl. And then it spoke, not in words I could recognize, just guttural sounds, breathy and broken, mimicking rhythm more than language. But the cadence was wrong in a deeply personal way. It was my voice, almost, just distorted, as if someone had recorded me in a dream and played it back underwater, spliced with something else entirely. It didn't speak often, but when it did, it always started the same way. A faint murmur rising into something jagged, like it was practicing, learning. I began blacking out. The first time, I woke up at a truck stop 200 miles west of where I remembered stopping. The second time, I came to a gas station bathroom, staring at a sink full of cold water, hands submerged, wrists red and raw. My shirt was on inside out. I told myself it was the pills finally catching up. The stress, the paranoia, the sleep I'd been denying my body for days. But it didn't explain the symbols. They started appearing on the dash. At first, it was just one, drawn in thick black Sharpie. Circular, spiral at the center, lines jutting outward like broken antennae. I scrubbed it off, but the next day it was back. Not in the same place. This time, it was etched into the passenger window. Later, a series of smaller symbols appeared across the sun visor. Always in my handwriting. Always freshly inked. I found a Sharpie under the seat one morning, cap off, ink still wet. My fingerprints all over it. But I didn't remember using it. I stopped trusting the mirrors. They lied. Showed me reflections that weren't mine. At least, not in the moment. One night, I caught a glimpse of myself in the side mirror. Only the reflection wasn't wearing the hat I had on. It stared back with sunken eyes, pale skin, mouth twitching in a mockery of a smile I never made. The image held for a second too long. even as I turned my head. The road was becoming fluid. Time fractured. My deliveries were days late, though I hadn't stopped. Everything blurred into a long smear of yellow lines and asphalt looping endlessly beneath the wheels. Then came the way station. It looked like any other portable building, steel inspection ramps, a flag whipping in the wind. But the moment I pulled in, I knew something was off. The officer glanced at my paperwork, then frowned. Something in his posture shifted. He flipped through the logbook, his expression tightening. When he handed it back, there was a pause, an uncomfortable silence as he tapped his pen and asked a question I didn't understand. Apparently, someone had been signing the logbook in my name for the past 4 nights. Same rig, same route, same CB handle, identical signatures. Only the stops and timestamps didn't match mine. I laughed, tried to play it off, but inside, my stomach turned to stone. Back in the cab, I flipped through the pages myself. For entries I didn't write, or didn't remember writing, each line in my own messy scrawl, almost convincing if I hadn't seen the real thing every day of my adult life. But these entries were off. Too neat in some places, too erratic in others. Like someone trying to copy me without understanding what it meant to be me. That night, I passed the scene of an accident. An abandoned semi sat jackknifed across the divider. Police lights pulsed in the distance. I slowed, rubbernecking like the rest, and that's when I saw the details. Same model, same make, same chipped blue paint on the fender, even the same dent on the side panel behind the passenger door. My rig, down to the CB, antenna curling forward like a question mark. The officer's report, taped hastily to the side window, confirmed it. No driver found. Cargo untouched. Plates matching mine. The cab was empty, but the engine had still been warm when they arrived. I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not without collapsing. By the time I made it to the next rest stop, I was shaking. I tore the cab apart, searched every compartment, every storage bin, every inch of floor space. I needed something, anything, to explain what was happening. That's when I found the second logbook. It was buried beneath the bunk mattress, wrapped in a towel like it had been hidden in a hurry. Identical to the one I used, same black cover, same manufacturer. I flip it open. My name was scrawled across the inside cover, but the handwriting was cleaner, more deliberate. The entries inside didn't match mine. Different stops, different dates, routes I hadn't taken, people I hadn't met. Some pages were covered in the same symbols I'd seen on the dashboard. Others included notes written in broken fragments, half-thoughts, directions to places that didn't exist, repeated phrases like "he sees through me" and "passenger not sleeping." One entry stood out. It was dated a full month ahead. It listed the city I was supposed to deliver to and said drop completed. Driver no longer needed. The words blurred in my vision. My heart pounded in my throat, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. The air inside the cab turned sour, thick with something not quite rot, not quite chemical. I looked up. The curtain behind the driver's seat had shifted again. Not flapping, not swaying, just moved, like it had been pulled. And this time it stayed open. I thought I'd beat the system, outsmarted sleep. But now I think sleep was protecting me from something. By the time I reached the state line, I'd burned through every Zeta Clear pill in the bottle, and it felt like they'd burned through me in return. My thoughts weren't just unraveling anymore. They were looping, repeating, doubling back. I started seeing road signs written in my own handwriting, scrawled with Sharpie across metal. Phrases I couldn't remember writing. Directions that led nowhere. Warnings I hadn't heeded. I couldn't keep going. The idea of sitting in that truck one more hour made my skin crawl. I pulled off at an unmarked exit, just a cracked signpost with peeling paint. No town name, no highway number. The road curved into a two-lane path that eventually led to a roadside motel squatting in the desert like it had grown out of the sand and rot. I left the engine running for a full minute before shutting it off. Part of me thought if I turned it off, whatever had been riding with me would finally catch up. But exhaustion won, or maybe something deeper. Not sleep, exactly. Resignation. The man at the desk, if there even was one, didn't say a word. The key was already waiting. Room 6. The air inside was stale, the walls stained with the memory of other drivers who'd stopped here and left part of themselves behind. I collapsed onto the bed without undressing. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, I let my eyes close. And I dreamed. Not dreams like most people know. Not flashes of memory or symbols or sound. I dreamed of driving. Endless asphalt under blood-red skies. Taillights like dying stars on a road that never bent or broke. I couldn't stop. Couldn't turn. Couldn't even feel the wheel in my hands, though I knew it was there. Behind me, something breathed, and then it spoke. Garbled. Familiar. It wore my voice again, but not just distorted. It was degraded like a copy of a copy. Its words crackled and warped, repeating in reverse. Sentences backward and broken, cycling endlessly. Drive now / take the wheel / nowhere goes somewhere / sleep sleeps you. In the rearview mirror, I saw them. Red eyes, set deep into something that wasn't a face. Not glowing, burning. No lids, no motion, just pure watching. And the worst part? It didn't blink, because it didn't need to. I woke with a gasp. The motel room was dark, lit only by the pale blue flicker of the television. My heart thudded heavy in my chest, my clothes damp with cold sweat. I sat up slowly, joints stiff like I hadn't moved in years. The TV wasn't playing cable. There was no sound, just black and white footage on loop, grainy security camera feed, like the kind mounted in the corners of old buildings. The image showed me, sleeping on a motel bed. Same clothes, same room, but I wasn't alone in the video. There was something standing over me, not moving, not shifting, just there, its limbs too long, head tilted unnaturally to one side. Watching, the footage looped, again and again. Each time, it seemed to lean closer. I ripped the power cord from the wall. The screen went dark, but the afterimage stayed with me. I needed to go, anywhere, just away. I checked my delivery status out of instinct. Opened the app on my phone with shaking fingers. According to the tracking system, the final drop had been completed, delivered, signed for. My name was on the signature line, but I hadn't delivered anything. My cargo was still locked in the trailer. Untouched, I drove back to where I'd parked the truck. It was still there, humming gently like a beast waiting to be fed. The air around it felt colder. Cleaner. Too clean. Inside, everything was pristine. The dash was wiped down. The sharpest symbols were gone. Even the driver's seat had been adjusted, pushed back like someone taller had taken my place. The mirror angles were wrong. The radio presets had been changed. And the pills gone. Nobody stirpak. No trafe. The drawer where I kept them was empty. Not just cleared out, vacuumed. Like nothing had ever been there at all. I opened the glove box. The logbook was missing. In its place sat a registration slip, freshly printed, but the truck wasn't registered to me anymore. A different name was listed, a name I didn't recognize. No contact information, no address. The VIN matched, the plates matched, but legally it wasn't mine. It hadn't been mine for days, maybe longer. I sat in the driver's seat, unsure of what to do next. My reflection in the rearview mirror didn't blink, didn't move with me. It just stared. That night, I checked into another motel down the road, far from the last. A new place, a different room. But last night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I heard the CB radio click on by itself. A voice came through. It wore my voice like a mask, and it said, "Next stop's yours, driver. Time to take the wheel."